It's time for PerfBytes.
What the is PerfBytes? The fourth square meal of the day. Don't bookmark PerfBytes. Waffles, microwave ready. Blobbity blah, blobbity blah. Add nutritional value to your brain.
It's time for PerfBytes with your hosts Mark Tomlinson and James Pulley. PerfBytes. Whatever.
Hey, it's time for PerfBytes once again with Mark Tomlinson. That'd be me. And then there's this other guy who joins me when we do these shows, my co-host, the very attractive and young at heart, James Pulley. James, how are you doing?
Thank you, Mark. I'm now uncomfortable that you think I'm attractive.
No, I just want people to know it's a radio show, and it's often that they don't actually see, our face, our shining face. They don't know that we're pretty affable, attractive people, and we do make public appearances, such as Software Test Pro conference, which is coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to do a live show, right?
I guess so.
Yes, we are. We're going to be there. That should be very exciting.
Okay.
Very exciting. James and I, for this episode, are both imbibing. We've had scotch, of course, on several shows. We did the show where you mentioned having beers, microbrews, right?
Yes,
we didn't drink
that's
beer.
True.
Tonight we're having red wine. What kind of red wine are you having?
Well, I'm going with the Trader Joe's $3 Chuck Merlot.
$3 Chuck Merlot, and it's worth it.
Yeah. It is definitely worth the $3.
$3.
So from a value perspective, it is worth more than what I paid for it. So it's a good deal.
I'm having a non-discriminate red wine that I actually bought in Charlotte when I was down there in July, and it's actually really tasty. I think it may be South African, could be South African. It doesn't have a South African accent, but maybe it's an apartheid wine. It could be an apartheid wine.
I guess it's good you kept it away from the Wookiee when you were here because he was getting pretty tore up.
He was, because that guy is such a lush. Seriously.
Now I understand why that scene was in that bar.
Well, yeah, I mean, those guys were hoodlums. Seriously, I mean, but they turn out to be good people when you give them a chance, right? Just like Luke and the Force give them a chance,
and when they dry out,
yeah. When they dry out, because when you're making all those fake runs to anyway, forget Star Wars. Yeah. It's not nice. Today's topic is we should give credit to Jeff Foxworthy many years ago for coming up with what was the name? What was I've totally spaced the original name of.
You might be a redneck if.
Yes, you might be a redneck, which is just this. We're going to have this whole thing today. We're going to talk about characteristics of performance testers and performance engineers and how you can tell whether you are or are not a performance tester or performance engineer. But before we get into that, James, what's going on in the world, in the news?
Well, Mark, I've collected some very interesting stories, yes. One of which is, I think we can call it the Art Bell file. I know you're an Art Bell fan.
I am, actually.
This is an underwater pyramid.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah, researchers are baffled as to how a 60-meter tall pyramid with a square base wider than a football stadium. By the way, I believe this would be a European football/soccer stadium.
Not an Australian footy. Like a footy, that's a weird shape. The footy.
No. This, the goalpost. It's a European story, so I think it's European football.
Okay, go with that. Yeah, but Art Bell's not from Europe.
Oh well, the story is, but not Art Bell.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So anyway, this is at the bottom of the Atlantic. Proximity wise, it's close to the island of Terceira, which evidently has been identified with. I got to use the A word, Atlantis. Myths going back to like the 1400s, 1500s. So, but, getting back to kind of the Art Bell theme, no giant crystals or unidentified underwater craft have been spotted, at least not to our knowledge.
So Stargate Atlantis maybe not, I thought it was real.
I don't know, but it's reportedly under investigation by the Portuguese Navy.
Okay, that's good. At least we have somebody who's not as persuaded by the likes of the Telos culture living underneath Mount Shasta or the Mer people that inhabits the Caribbean seas. Somebody serious like the Navy will actually look into this thing.
I was actually thinking of Jesse Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota.
Hey, there's nothing like a feather boa to really bring a level of seriousness to an investigation like this, I think.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Next up, Bitcoins. Now, we've had Bitcoins on a couple of different shows. And we discussed kind of the merits of the Bitcoin, a digital currency, kind of built up out of the ether and stuff like that. Well, as it turns out, Bitcoins might be used by criminals, Mark.
It makes perfect sense.
Well, the FBI shut down an online drug black market site called Silk Road and arrested the founder or the brains behind the operation, Russ Ulbricht.
Yes.
And in the raid, they were able to seize about 26,000 Bitcoins from customers worth about $3.2 million. But here's the big haul. They got Ross's wallet.
Okay.
And Ross's wallet, they estimate, has 60,000 Bitcoins worth about $80 million.
Okay.
But the problem is, there's some encryption that goes along with Bitcoin.
Yep.
And Ross won't give up the encryption key. So it's like holding a safe that you can't crack or a wallet with super strong Velcro. You just can't get into it. But here's the real kicker. The amount of Bitcoins confiscated represents about 5% of the world's total Bitcoin generation. And
that's huge.
And ironically, I know, Mark, this is hard to imagine, Bitcoin was the default currency of Silk Road. They didn't accept anything else.
Really? That's very
so
scary.
I'm not saying that Bitcoin was built to help kind of scrub your money, but I think I'll just stop there.
Yeah, Bitcoin's totally encrypted. You can not trace them or trace them depending on where you can find out where a Bitcoin came from, right? It has a header within it.
It's got a full history. It's got a chain of ownership. So from generation to your current use, who has had it. But clearly you're doing a little bit of transferring into some sort of clean and out of clean condition here, makes you kind of worried about, a little taint of where your Bitcoin has been. Next up, you like Chrome?
I like Chrome, especially on my wife's Triumph Bonneville motorcycle. It's actually really nice. I'm sorry. You meant the browser.
Well, and the OS too.
Yes, Chrome OS.
Yes, you got Chrome OS, you got Windows 8. Well, what if we were to kind of combine these two creatures into what look like mirrored sunglasses? Do we need to call it tinted windows or mirrored windows or something?
Mirrored windows.
Chrome, Windows, mirrored windows.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It mirrored.
Mirrored Chrome or Google in the latest developer release of Chrome is taking advantage of some Metro-style interface items in Windows 8 to allow Chrome applications to basically inhabit the start screen and the desktop just as if they were native Windows apps with the look and feel of Chrome OS on top of Windows 8. So you're layering Chrome on top of the Windows 8 interface. You can argue which is one better than the other, but you're going to have available the Chrome App Store along with that, and so
Microsoft already has their App Store.
So you have little competing interests there, and the net effect is, like I said, very Chrome-like OS look and feel layered on top of Windows. This even extends to having the traditional Chrome App Store available. It's oddly intriguing. Is Google Office the Trojan horse of the industry? Who knows?
It could be. Or we'll call it the gazing ball.
The gazing ball.
Yeah, that's I came up with that, by the way. Copyrighted here.
Okay. Okay. Next up, we've been deluded for years with the movies related to the Terminator and Skynet and
the Terminator.
The Terminator. Is Skynet one computer, or is it a virus, or how does it work?
Didn't it start with that guy in the hand? No, the hand. Wait a minute. No, he went back in time and had the hand, and then the hand inspired the guy to write the thing from the thing of the technology and the chip that was in the chip of the...
It's all a very weird Einsteinian multiverse, different timeline. Yeah, I can't figure it out. I'm sure Spock in the latest Star Trek series, the old Spock, could figure it out, but I can't.
Yeah.
But I ran across this very interesting story on the top 500 supercomputer sites.
Oh yeah.
With a modeling of a human brain by a bunch of Japanese and German computer scientists in August of this year. And they set out to model the behavior of the human brain. They had 83,000 processors on the supercomputer. Yeah, I mean, this
Holy shit.
83,000 processors. And get this, with all that processing capacity, the team was able to mimic just 1% of 1 second's worth of human brain activity, and that model took 40 minutes to run.
I have to say, James, for people who are threatened by computers putting them, like automation putting you out of a job or being computerized out of a job, only in certain, I think that wave is already done, like in manufacturing and robotics and stuff. Even in manufacturing, we've proven that if we automate your job with a computer, guess what? We're going to teach you how to maintain the computer. That's how we keep control of Skynet, right? We don't let the computers take over. Humans are in charge. And so we still have 99% of an advantage over even the largest, fastest computer on the planet. We're still smarter and faster.
Let me give you a little bit more specs on this supercomputer. It's Japan's K supercomputer. Mm-hmm. It's rated at 10 petaflops and 10.5 quadrillion calculations per second. In order to run the simulation, they use 1 petabyte of RAM to model 1.73 billion virtual nerve cells, 10.4 trillion virtual synapses, each with only 24 bytes of memory per synapse. What they can't figure out is why it keeps repeating the number 42 over and over and keeps referring to itself as Marvin and seems depressed.
Yeah, Marvin. Oh, I have to say, we should give a shout out to Regine Eichler-West, the only person I've ever met in my career who has a PhD in computational neuroscience, and I would be really interested to hear from her what her thoughts are after she built some of the original hill climber routines to simulate virtual nerve cells, actually synapse activity and interaction. So, yeah.
I wonder if some of her work was used as a basis for this model.
Could be. That was University of Minnesota Supercomputing Center, and they did the similar thing with like a couple thousand processors, but that was 20 plus years ago. Amazing. Good Lord, 42. Yeah. 42 minutes of 42 days of 42 hours of 42 seconds.
And Marvin. So Mark, we have a really interesting topic this week.
We do. I love this topic.
And it's kind of a lighthearted topic, and it deals with performance testing and performance engineering. Getting back to Jeff Foxworthy, the signs you might be a performance tester.
You might be a performance tester, and take it from James and I, and a couple of glasses of wine to come up with the following list. And I'm going to put the first one out there, James, if that's all right with you.
Go for it.
You might be a performance tester if, when traveling across the country to HP Discover in Las Vegas, you can't help yourself but to post pictures of every barbecue joint that you visit and post that on Twitter for everyone to salivate over while they're stuck at their desks doing performance tests. Of course.
I have no idea where this came from.
No idea who that is.
No.
Or why, or that his name is Scott Moore. Again, he might be a performance tester if you're like him and you do that.
That's true. That's true.
Right. That's right. Because we love barbecue.
True. And number two also brings up another common affliction or interest of performance testers. If your purveyor of fine single malt libations knows you by first name, holds the good stuff behind the counter for you, and is the godparent of one of your family pets, you might be a performance tester.
I have to say I was out to dinner recently and was not having scotch during our dinner, and the waitress that came up to our table in our neighborhood, the grill where you and James we went there with Martha and I, And the woman that came up to the table just happened to be the regular bartender. And I just ordered like sparkling water. And she looks at me and no kidding, she says, "What? No scotch?" Like, not tonight. Sorry. I might not be a performance tester.
Well, you were out with
took
the
a night
lovely
off.
Martha.
Yes,
Yeah.
took a night off. That's right. Very good. All right, so here's another one for you. For those of you who are just learning tools about performance testing, you might be a performance tester if you refuse to start writing any scripts until someone tells you what the non-functional requirements are, including the SLAs defined to a percentile containing 3 digits of significance at a minimum. That's serious. You're taking your job very seriously in that case.
Well, that we do have a problem with people start writing long before they understand what they're going to test.
Yeah, because you'll come up with a beautiful piece of scripted automation, and it doesn't prove anything. Like it doesn't match the hypothesis. It's not actually going to prove something to the business in terms of scalability or response time.
It goes back to
but it doesn't do anything.
It goes back to the wine I'm drinking. It's a value proposition. Are you getting more out of it what you put into it?
Yeah, if you pay $3 to get your scripts written, you're going to have a $3 script that proves nothing.
Well, actually, if you pay $3 to get your script written, you might have a 1 cent script. But yeah, that's a separate issue. But
there's another item on the list that we wrote, James. We'll get to that.
Okay. Well, I really love the next characteristic of a performance tester, and Mark and I go back and forth on this one, is you refuse to run load generators on virtual machine, no matter what your CIO, your direct manager, or HPC.
We're going to start it again. There are people that are given no choice. They have to provide some value around performance, and their entire world is virtualized. What are they supposed to do?
You're right. These are people whose I was going to say something that was going to get me in trouble with the FCC.
There's no FCC. We're on the internet.
That's right, and they're closed down now. Anyway,
exactly. So, yeah.
These are people whose private parts have been snipped off, and they're not able to stand up for what is right for their industry and for their business that they're delivering value to.
Yep.
Because the people that are making this decision will not take any ownership of the reduced value.
Yes. So if you need someone to back you up and beat up your CIO about still having physical load generators, call James. He's got the argument worked out.
I will be very happy to lay out the case to your CIO at no charge to any organization on the planet and say, here's the real deal. If you want value, here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to do it, independent of tool, and let them make the decision at that point.
Yep.
But also let them own it.
Yes. So here's another really important characteristic. If you might be a performance tester, if you can spell the word no, and also if you're not afraid to actually say that in front of the customer. Like, take for instance this sentence. So we can deploy the software, right? Even if it doesn't really scale? You say, no. Or here's another one, James. 3-second response time is fine during our peak load, isn't it? And you say, no. So if you're capable of that, you might be a performance tester.
Yeah. The next one. And I gotta say, there's some flashbacks on this one. You keep a winter parka and a wool cap at your desk in case of a long night's testing in the lab.
Yes.
And now, Mark, I have to say a couple of extensions to this.
Yes.
I know people that have Army surplus cots that are underneath cubicles.
Okay.
I myself have 2 hammocks that are perfect for hanging up in the lab.
You could do a hammock in the lab, although I have to say the air circulation, you'll probably be much, much colder in a hammock. Unless you had a cot, you could curl up in the corner. But if it's raised floor, you're probably still moving air.
Yep.
I remember Cliff Benedict, actually, and maybe even John Wishon was telling me stories about being at some gig somewhere on a Shunra gig. And they were in the middle of construction in the data center. And in order to stay warm, they took some of the construction plastic and made a tent around their workstation just to keep the cold air from blowing right on them. And, if you know how to do that, believe me, you you can performance test if you can do a week's worth of a gig in the data center like that.
And something that we left out is we probably left out earplugs, because in a lot of data centers that are still moderated at 49.8 degrees, the amount of white noise can be a little bit unbearable.
And believe me, the new days of sort of super automation DevOps, you hear of these super data centers like a Google data center, Facebook data center. People spend very little time in the data center anymore with all the other technologies. We lived at a special time, James, working where people would say, no, your only option is to go live in the lab for a week in the data center. Though a lot of people are thankfully never going to have to go through that again. We can hope.
Well, in those super data centers, they'd be challenged to find their correct cage where the key fits.
Just start unplugging stuff. That's what I say.
Mark, I need you to hold on for just a second. It's time for a word from our sponsors. Hosting for PerfBytes.com has been provided by NUCO, New Centers of Excellence in Performance Engineering, PowerTest Professional Services, The Script Farm, LoadRunner by the Hour, Videratech, Cloud Architect, and No Load Test. For more information, go to www.newcoe.com or call 703-856-8187.
Yeah. So Mark, you're up.
Here's another good one for you. And this one I can speak of personally. You might be a performance tester if you collect performance disaster stories. And after 3 glasses of port wine at the Thanksgiving dinner table, you just can't stop but telling them and laughing by yourself sitting at the table when everyone else is gone, because you're kind of sad and kind of neurotic about, yeah.
Mark, does Martha just kind of sit there with you and kind of pat you on the shoulder?
Yeah, she's very nice. She's nice about it. Yeah, okay. But sometimes I get a little lost, especially around Cyber Monday.
Yeah. I get kind of twitches around that day personally. This is one. The next one is really personal to me.
Really?
The one on Thanksgiving was really personal to you. This one's really personal to me, and
really?
Especially since my mom listens to this show.
Of course.
My friends and family have gone on record legally stating they have no idea what I actually do for a living. They're just happy I'm working.
Yes. So
yeah. So you may be a performance tester. If no matter what you say to your friends and family about what you do, they still have no idea what it is you do or how you do it or why you do it. They're just happy for you.
My parents and extended family, when I was in my 20s, I was just doing functional testing. And I would tell them about, automating trains and running trains together. Still, like every family gathering I would go to, it wasn't senility. Like these guys were probably my age. They were in their 40s or early 50s. Even at that, they were still like, what do you do again? You don't fix cars. You don't, what are you, do landscaping? What was it, computer stuff? Like, oh my God. Again, a whole generation of engineers nowadays, James, they're never going to deal with that because now everything, people grew up with computers,
Yep. Yeah, that's true.
Right. We're going to be a special time for us. The next one I have for you, this is pretty good. You might be a performance tester if you can speak at least 3 languages: LoadRunner, database, and network. Get it? They're not really languages.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I got it.
Okay, that one. Okay, it was kind of a stretch.
Yeah, that's a Letterman-esque one. Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
But in C-3PO in Star Wars, do you speak Bocce?
Of course I speak Bocce.
I speak like all 37 some dialects of Bocce, and I keep thinking to myself, Bocce is like a yard game with like little long.
Yeah, it's like an Italian version of bowling or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Bowling, yeah.
What's an android on a desert planet going to do knowing how to play bocce?
Evidently, it's important.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one goes out to Petar Puskarich. If you have a couple of old Clarion disc arrays as end tables in your living room,
You might be
a performance tester.
Yeah. They make great end tables, actually. They're really stable.
They're just the right height.
Perfect height. Yeah.
They've got the lead in the bottom to act as a, kind of a cushion against vibration.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can still fire them up, you can store maybe 5 or 10 MP3s on them.
Actually, they make great space heaters too.
Space heaters, there you go. Yeah, that'd be nice. Okay. All right, so here's a serious one, James. This get a little more serious. I know we're kind of goofy. Keep drinking wine. But you may actually be a performance tester. And follow me on this one, James. If you know the difference between analysis and synthesis.
Analysis and synthesis.
What do you think?
That's kind of deep, Mark.
What do we mean by that?
Analysis and synthesis. So synthesis would be the ability to internalize the data and then provide and then be able to project what is likely to happen.
I think moreover, analysis would be that you're digging in and you're digging into the data, but you're not taking anything out of it. But synthesis is when you take something out of the data, what you're learning, and you synthesize that with the greater meaning and the understanding that of what you're doing, the whole purpose. What does 42 mean, James?
I don't believe we're allowed to understand what it means, because if we have the two together, the answer and the question, the universe collapses on itself, and we get another Big Bang event.
We don't want that to happen. It's just for a little podcast like this, it's just not worth it. I don't think.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Next up is you monitor everything all the time. This is not an option. Get used to it. So if you monitor everything all the time, if you've got OCD to the extreme, yes, you may be a performance tester. You may be other things, but you may be a performance tester too.
You might. Let's say you time how long it takes you to chew and swallow your food. 3.6 seconds of chewing, followed by 1.7 seconds worth of swallowing my food. If you measure how many ounces are in each glass of water you drink, that could be good. You're monitoring the rate of water.
I play beat the clock on long-term drives. You get the initial estimate on the GPS on your estimated arrival time.
Yes.
It's like, oh no, I could beat that.
Oh yeah, exactly. Garmin always gives you kind of by the book, right? If I can go 5 miles an hour over, I might shave 1 minute off and get there early because I'm smart. Because
I've got a 700-gallon gas or 700-mile gas tank. If my bladder can hold out, I can beat that time.
Okay. No sense in going really into the details there, James.
Oh, okay.
All right, here's another one for you. You might be a performance tester if you giggle a little bit every time you see the word rendezvous in a VUGen script. See, James? It's the way I said it, isn't it? It just makes it funny. It's a French term. Like you're gonna and the French are funny. Yeah, and what happens if these two V users are going to meet up somewhere on the load generator together? What's going to happen? One V user looks in the other V user's eyes. Just love it. I see you are doing the login routine. I have just done the login routine myself, but I will do another one with you together. Ha! That's it. The user's in love. That's right. Sorry.
And the French love Jerry Lewis. God bless him.
Exactly. That's fine. Yeah.
and the last one, Mark, is just just kind of one of those little bits of trivia. If you can correctly respond to the question, how many seconds are in a day, in less than 2 seconds, you're probably a performance tester. because you actually have to know that for scheduling your tests.
So right now, if anyone knew the answer to how many seconds are in one full day, 24 hours, and you knew it like right off the top of your head, go become a load tester, become a performance tester right now. Because that calculation should be like in the forefront of your mind. And I can tell you, James and I had to whip out the calculator. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that those questions like that keep me awake at night.
That's right. All right, my friend, we are at the bottom of the hour, and we're going to come back after the news of the damned. We're going to cover all the things where you might not be a performance engineer. But right now, it's the news of the damned.
Hello, PerfBytes listeners. It's your old friend Satan here. It is with great esteem that I'm proud to introduce this week's edition of the News of the Damned.
Can you dig it?
There's that guy again screaming in the background. Guy's all he's trying to do is sign up for affordable health care. And this week's news of the damned.
That's about right this week.
Right. Hey, Satan made an appearance on Harry Shearer's Le Show this last 2 weeks ago. So I was listening, and Satan, who hung out with us just to endow the show with some of his.
So did he plug the show? Did he plug News of the Damned?
No, I honestly, I think we didn't really have a deal worked out. It wasn't contractual, right? He's a very important guy, and his rates are pretty big. So, anyway, James, what do you got for us this week in the News of the Damned?
Well, it cannot be this time of year on News of the Damned without a British music festival, and we have a repeat contender,
a repeat offender. Right? Oh my gosh.
The Glastonbury Music Festival. They were on this time about last year when their tickets went on sale.
Yes.
And they had the same problem this year. Tickets go on sale. Their ticket provider, in this case, C-Tickets, website crashed as soon as they went live. It's a point load condition. Everybody's waiting to buy tickets. Boom, crash. With the British music industry, ticket providers, these point load situations, it's getting a little boring. It's kind of an up demand, nothing to see here. Same story, different year. You picture kind of a Bobby saying, I'm sorry, there's nothing to see here. Please move along.
Please move along. Yeah, I will have to say, if you were like in psychiatry, you would come up with sort of maybe a symptoms checklist. You could just sort of say, Mr. Glastonbury, you were with us last year. Have you changed any? Have you experienced any of the following symptoms? Website hasn't changed. Haven't changed this. Did you listen to PerfBytes? No. You could go right down the list. Did anyone call you from a testing tool, load testing vendor to help you out? No. Okay. Well, I'm sorry to give you a prescription here, but you're diagnosed with being stupid about performance. Yeah. So sorry for you guys. Nothing we can do for you. But the only advice we have is go listen to, How to Survive Point Load, because we have lots of good tips.
Well, ultimately, it's the consumers that pay the price here.
That's right.
It's not the music festival, because they are a monopoly in this case. You're going to keep coming back to them to buy tickets.
Honestly,
it's consumers that pay the price.
It's funny. Things like this are going to fuel like festers who are into music. Things like this, they're very kind of earthy, or they're kind of not digital. They go to listen to music to unplug, right? Yeah. A classic ticket distribution, word of mouth, hand them out kind of stuff by hand. They could go analog big time, and that could happen. And then, hey, some vendor somewhere, the internet's not gonna miss them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Next up is a TV series in the United States. There's a TV series, Mark, called Shark Tank.
Oh, yes, Shark Tank.
I haven't watched it, but, I've caught it flipping channels on occasion.
Yes.
The premise of the show is you bring entrepreneurs on, and you have a panel of successful business individuals, and the entrepreneur presents their business idea, their marketing plan, where they uniquely fit in the market, what's their catch, and they try to get these established business personnel to give them money. or to help them with marketing or other events to help build their business.
Yeah, because doesn't everyone somehow want to get a job in product management and marketing? I mean, that's a wonderful job that everyone should do, and everyone should be in that job.
At least once.
Sorry, I'm at least once. Touche, my friend.
Yeah. So the problem, of course, is you get on these sites or you get on these shows, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, people are interested. They go to your website.
Yeah.
What do you think happens, Mark?
It's a slash dot. It's Prancercise all over again. You present your idea, and that's the whole idea, right? They're just selling. These guys are just selling. So put up a static page. If you know the event is coming, say, put something simple up and just scale the thing out on the cloud and have a nice day.
This goes back to Dr. Drew, Oprah,
Steve Harvey,
Limbaugh show, Steve Harvey. If you're going to be on these shows need to have a briefing document. Mark, maybe you and I need to write this or something. Just give it to them.
Put it in the rider. Put it in your contract.
Yeah, but there needs to be some sort of education of the downstream person appearing on the show. If you're going to appear on the show, you're likely to get an exceptional point load condition. Here's what you need to do: 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, 1 week out, 2 days out, 1 day out, and here's who you need to have available in order to survive it. Because ultimately, for these guys on the Shark Tank or gals, this is revenue.
Yeah,
to them.
Yep. Too bad for them.
Yeah. Next up, Mark, Hootsuite, and I believe you observed this one. Why don't you go into the details on it?
So Hootsuite, if anyone's not familiar with it, is like a social media super tool. It's a great tool for teams and people that are in marketing and have to coordinate for events and team tweeting and Facebook. I mean, it supports all this stuff. And, it's not so fascinating. It turns out it wasn't actually it wasn't a massive outage. It was a kind of a minimal outage. But it's honestly the first time I have ever seen Hootsuite go out, because it's kind of an aggregator. It's a pretty thin app, and it actually loads stuff to you as a client, so it really doesn't have a lot of central resource. So it must. I don't know the details behind it, but I can tell you I read a story that said while they were going through this short outage, which lasted only maybe 30, 40 minutes tops, something like that, there was like a dramatic drop in social media traffic. So that's because I think businesses do team tweeting and all this stuff and their events and all this stuff, and it just comes to a screeching halt. So to that end, Hootsuite, just simple redundancy. I have no idea if someone forgot to pay the DNS registration for some reason that day or what the deal was. But yeah, just basically a simple hiccup. And it's just like when, Amazon went down, and all of a sudden, like Google went down, and all of a sudden, bam, 40% of the internet traffic disappeared.
Yeah, then Amazon went down, Netflix went down, Vudu went down. Yeah. All these services had dependencies upon Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you become part of the infrastructure, part of the fabric, going down, people aren't going to take so kindly. So too bad, Hootsuite. I still love you, but people are going to be looking at Seismic, homegrown solutions. They're going to go back to TweetDeck, who knows what, and I that would be bad because
Well, Mark, the next one is really interesting.
You buried the lead, didn't we?
Yeah, you kind of let the cat out of the bag in this case, which is the Affordable Health Care Act. And Mark, you and I are on different sides of the political spectrum on this. And by the way, anyone who doesn't agree with Mark, they're blooming insane. I just want to get that out of the way. So I'm not going to tell you what his position is, but you must be insane.
Actually, what's funny is it's kind of nice because anyone that doesn't agree with me, well, they can agree with you. That's awesome. And anyone that doesn't agree with you, hey, I'll talk to him.
Exactly.
Yeah, no worries.
So by the way, here's an example of two people on opposite sides of the political spectrum who get along pretty well, I think.
Exactly.
But here's something that we can both agree on. Oh my God!
Yeah,
the Affordable Health Care Act deployment and the websites and the signups for the healthcare exchanges. For those of you who are not in the United States, about 5 years ago passed a law which mandated that all people have insurance in the private market, and the healthcare exchanges are there to allow people to compare policies and buy them on the open market, get subsidies from the government. So basically, it's a private market mechanism to provide kind of universal coverage on the insurance side of the house.
Yeah,
and they've had 5 years in the planning for this. They knew this day was coming. And it looks like to be a perfect storm of all sorts of bad performance engineering practices. And it wasn't just the national healthcare exchange that went down, the one operated by Health and Human Services, United States government. It was state exchanges as well, from New York to Rhode Island to Maryland to Florida to Washington State to California, all over the country. And they all had really the same problems at the core. There were design problems from the outset.
Yeah.
So you get this issue of, I have a high volume website. It's point load condition. You put up the site. A whole bunch of people are going to show up. You want them to move to the site as fast as possible in order to free up resources for other users. What do? They design a site that requires you to move through the site as slow as possible, give as much information as possible, slow people down. So you have the rate of people arriving at X, you have the rate of people departing at X minus infinity. They're just sitting on the site forever. I heard in some cases people sitting on the site for 3 to 5 hours to get quotes. And they're using resources the whole time.
Yeah, so this is
insane.
This is the subtle thing that you bring up, James, and this is a perf rant.
It's time for a perf rant.
That was pretty good. When we mean sitting on the site, we mean that your session object has to stay alive. And we think that one of the underload conditions that really failed this site is that initiating a session and people, they would get through step 1, step 2, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm sorry, we lost your session, and come back and try again. And so they kept trying. So what's interesting, the most interesting thing about this to me, James, technically, is that even if these guys, first of all, we know they probably didn't do any load testing, or even if they did, it was inadequate.
I think it's a virtual certainty that they haven't done any performance testing at this point.
But let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they did something, maybe for load, and maybe their estimates were off, and that's fine. Being off in your estimate, but that's neither here nor there. What I think is really interesting for these guys is that they failed to anticipate the performance characteristics of being in a failed state. So usually you have a happy path testing where someone shows up at the site, they successfully log in, they complete their session, and they log out, and they're done. Like you said, James, they get on, they get off. Yeah. What is the performance characteristic of the negative condition? A good game day exercise, like a DevOps person would describe it, would be, what if people have problems getting on and they retry and they retry and they retry? Suddenly you've got people that, if the initial estimate was 100,000 people, now you've got people that are coming back 2, 3, 4, 5 times in the population. Your estimates not only are way off, but the fact that you're in a failure condition means you're guaranteeing your estimates are way, way off. So this really raised an eyebrow for me on, wow, really designing, I don't know, negative test, or would you call it a negative test, but an extreme test would be a failure state test where somebody tries to do something, they fail, and they come back and they try again and they try again and they try again and they try again. That's a very different characteristic than just a happy path. So I thought that was the most interesting thing here.
Yeah. My most interesting thing was more on the design side. That for all of the estimates, whatever the politicians said or didn't say on different sides of the political spectrum, if you were estimating that n number of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people were going to show up, you really design a site one way, which is minimal resource, minimal footprint. Amazon is the classical example of this. One click, purchase and exit.
Those guys are really good at it. I mean, the one-click invention, not just from a patent, but the technical implementation of one-click is fantastic. It works very well.
Also imagine this, if you have 4 steps in your checkout process, that's 4 points along the way where people are going to decide whether to continue or not. If you just have one click, your conversion rate is much higher. Of course,
beautiful idea. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a secret to the industry right there.
But what do you think about the admonition of the guys in the Atlantic article talking about they did spend time on the UX design? I will say that the site looked beautiful. But when it came to actually scaling, that's where it fell apart. They didn't even talk about doing load testing.
I've got a great observation of that, and Scott Highsmith is going to steal this from me. I think is you know what, the error pages render beautifully and very fast.
And there's nothing faster than a 404, really. But they had beautiful error pages, but they spent a lot of time following contemporary performance practices, as we've talked about, Steve Souders, bringing developer and designer attention to performance, and that's great. It's just all of a sudden there's a project manager who said, "Well, you guys doing performance?" And of course, the dev lead says, "Yeah." But
We're doing it at the desktop.
They're doing it at the desktop on a single session for the UI, but they're not actually doing load testing. Where they didn't really put a much attention. So it's really unfortunate. Just like anyone on the News of the Damned, we're really sad.
And Mark, I actually asked around. I took a survey of the industry, and I could not find a single performance engineer that was doing any work on these projects.
Yeah.
So you might have had the classical, I have a prime contractor and I'm putting a warm body in a seat. Oh, they've done some testing somewhere, but they haven't got a clue. They haven't been trained, don't have a mentor. They're struggling with it, or my best guess is they just didn't do it. They followed the Steve Souders model on the front end UI optimization.
Yeah, and no matter how sexy this new architecture they came up with sounds, it didn't work well. And they, had they tested more and more often and sooner, we might have been able to prevent it. But,
yeah.
So that's the News of the Damned. Stay tuned. I'm sure, James, you and I will have more on the ACA because it's just an incredible story of our specific industry and specific practices. So
yes. So if you collect News of the Damned stories on why performance engineers have value, this should be case study number 1 of what happens when you don't have a performance engineer on your staff versus a performance tester.
Yeah.
And Mark, that takes us right back to our topic. We talked about performance testers before, News of the Damned. Now we're at performance engineers.
Yeah. Now there's a difference, right? There's a difference between being a performance tester, performance engineer. Sometimes a performance tester is seen as somebody a little later in the process who's just sort of validating the performance to meet requirements or characteristics that, the business needs or the operations guys needs. But a performance engineer, if you want to differentiate yourself in your career, even, you might start as a load tester and then you kind of work your way into being sort of a super engineer. You know more about architecture, a little wider scope. And so these are some of the signs that, unfortunately, you might not be a performance engineer.
I think the number one, Mark, is if your only coding experience is in your test tool. If you think of a foundation skill in development for performance engineer, if your only coding experience is LoadRunner or JMeter or Silk Performer or OpenSDA or one of the Erlang based tools or something. RPT.
Yeah.
Rational Performance Tester. So you're probably not a performance engineer. You're a tool jockey. And you might be able to make the tool sing, but if you don't have the respect of your dev peers, you're probably not there.
Yeah, and because a lot of the testing scripting that you do is very, I want to say, sequential, right? It's just it's very sequence based. Do X, do Y. It's got a flow to it, and real development nowadays is fully object oriented. It's much more modular. So if you don't write scripts the same way you actually write code. And to be a performance engineer, you probably need to get in touch with what the devs are actually doing.
Get in touch with your inner developer.
Your inner developer, that's right. Here's another one. You might not be a performance engineer if you think that capacity planning has something to do with the settings on your belt, particularly around Thanksgiving.
Or Oktoberfest, or sushi night,
yes. Barbecue, eating barbecue.
Barbecue event.
Yeah. Because actual capacity planning has nothing to do with dieting or not dieting. It has to do with system capacity, not your gut. Think twice, yeah.
Next up, Mark, it has to do with how you spell things.
What?
It's how you spell.
Okay.
If you spell the word cash, CASH,
You might not be.
you might not be a performance tester, and you might need to speak to your significant other about their spending habits too. But a separate issue. But you're probably not a performance tester if when you hear the word cash, the first thing that comes to mind is CASH.
CSSH, yes. Let me think twice about it. Here's another one, James, for you. This just came to me. It's funny as that seems. You might not be a performance tester if when somebody you know...
A performance engineer.
You might not be a performance engineer if somebody you know asks you about sniffing the network and you immediately open your browser and go to your LinkedIn page to check your messages. The network is a totally different thing from your LinkedIn network. Okay, so maybe you should go. You should probably go into sales. Okay, just networking.
Yeah. Sales or recruiting.
Sales or recruiting, exactly. Perfectly good professions. No disrespect.
Yeah, and the next one, Mark, I think I should pick on the affordable healthcare people. I think we're going to pick on them for at least 6 months on this one.
Yep.
If you believe a website of static pages can support 4.7 million visits in 24 hours without crashing or being so slow that your name ends up on the national nightly news, you're probably not a performance engineer.
Probably not. You're probably not even a load tester at that point.
Mark, I would even debate that 4.7 million visits because we've seen numbers all over the map.
That's true.
On this thing, is a hit a visit?
Yes.
Is a session a visit? Is Hobbit a visit? I don't know, but
a hobbit.
A hobbit.
A hobbit is a visit.
A hobbit is a visit. Well, we might as well throw around any number of terms because they appear to be doing so on the news stories.
I often measure most websites in hobbits per second. It's essential part of my work, particularly with the folks in New Zealand, right? Because they have Peter, what's his name, left that freaking village, just ruined the landslide. I mean, just left it there. It's still there.
Hobbiton?
Yeah, I mean, that's like making wall drugs, South Dakota. I mean, New Zealand's beautiful. What the hell are you doing? It's ridiculous. Some tourist attraction like that. All right, moving forward. Here's another one for you, James. If you might not be a performance engineer, if you work in the operations department of any event ticketing agency within 100 kilometers of the United Kingdom, we have yet to find one ticket agency in the UK that stays up. If anyone knows of one, please call us or send an email.
We will do a free promo.
Yeah, exactly.
Agency
we'll praise you. Show. We'll give you an award because it's just we haven't found them yet.
Or we'll invite you on the show to talk about how you are able to do successfully what the others cannot do within the UK.
Yes, exactly.
I think that would be a great discussion. Mark, the next one really appeals to me.
Really?
Yeah. If you believe you might not be a performance engineer if you believe in the fairy tale of a magic land filled with creatures who can simply record and replay your script automatically without editing or parameterizing. And so you record and you replay and we're in a happy land.
And you ignore the crimson hemorrhage of errors in the LoadRunner controller as the scenarios are running. Oh, I don't know what those errors are, but the test is fine. I think we're describing.
Yeah, we're all happy. We're all happy.
That's right. What is smoking magic mushrooms from fairyland there? Oh, beautiful. All right, here's a good one for you. We just talked about performance test planning. This one I think is quite good. You might not be a performance engineer if you are complicit, if you agree to completing your performance testing within the 2 weeks at the end of the project right before they go live.
So Mark, you're saying you have no air gap, you have no requirements, you have no resources, and you've just committed to 2 weeks.
Yeah. If you say yes to that, you're probably not a good performance engineer. You're probably a lousy performance engineer.
You might not even be a good performance tester because it gets back to that no word.
That's right. Say no.
Yeah. Mark, we as a performance engineer, we have to deal with all sorts of other parts of the organization.
That's right.
And I gotta say, sometimes you might not be a performance engineer if you don't have a peculiar love-hate relationship with your colleagues in development, architecture, and operations. They respect you, they fear you, they hate you, they love you, and the feeling's kind of mutual.
Yes, I'll agree with that. Like you can shoot them the straight stuff, and they may not like what you're saying, but they respect you for being honest. And there's a particular personality that makes a great performance engineer to be able to do that. So if you're just kind of mealy mouthed and people don't really trust you, trust your word, then you're probably not a good performance engineer at all. Here's a good one mathematically for you. You might not be a performance engineer if you think that the mean, statistically, actually is how you explain how we all got here on Earth and why we are all here on Earth, and our purpose and why we exist.
I think there's a Noodlius reference in here someplace.
It could be an atheist, but I mean, still, there's also Monty Python's Meaning of Life.
Yeah,
Think about that,
true.
right? When they were talking about Nietzsche in the old age, the old couple.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's just statistical quant humor there. I don't know if you got that.
Yeah, that's true. I guess we could have talked about quartiles or something, but
Yeah.
that brings to mind, what is probably the next thing associated with you might not be a performance engineer. If you think percentile is an extinct reptile from southern France.
With pointed teeth. That's going to come and bite you in the lab. The percentile is a 16-foot-long meat-eating monster. Lives in the swamps of southern France. Okay, yes. Okay, that's good. It's obviously we're having a little bit of wine. All right, so we're down to the end here. The last couple of them. Number 12. If you might not be a performance engineer, quite simply, if you have no idea what the number 42 means and no clue that it is the relative performance answer to everything about performance.
Yes, it is the universal constant in all performance tests.
Right, but 42% CPU, 42% memory.
42 minutes on the combined ramp up and ramp down.
Right, for the queue length of 42.
Exactly.
42 connections to the database. No kidding, James. My current customer on each app server, 42 DP connections in the database pool.
Excellent.
I know, 42. Well, and you ask, and it just, so if somebody asks, well, how come we have 42? Because it's the answer to everything. It's perfect.
No. Yeah. It is a very important constant. So, and lastly, Mark, on the performance engineering side, you might not be a performance engineer if you believe you know better than the business about what the application functionality should be and why.
Don't second guess the money. Don't second guess the hand that feeds you. Wait a minute.
It's like, they gave us these requirements, but you know what? I think I know better.
I think I know better. I think I'm going to code it differently with this one little mutex on the single thread in the middle of the app.
Mark, I'm going to reprioritize the user stories and do the ones that are easiest to develop first versus the ones that are most valuable.
Yeah, because the weekend's coming up and I don't want to work late. So
yeah.
But let those performance guys work it out. Yeah, no, we're not going to talk to them. So there's a lot of advice if you're trying to self-describe and find yourself in a career for performance testing, performance engineering. This entire episode will help you decide if you've kind of got what it takes, right? If you've got what it takes to be a performance tester or maybe not be a performance engineer. James, do you have any actual sincere advice for somebody who's considering going down these paths?
Yes, whether it is performance testing or performance engineering, find a mentor. This is independent of your tool education. You think of the development model going all the way back to stonemason to engineer in the modern era. You have foundation skills, you have tool specific skills, you have process items that you need to develop, and then you need to bring all of these elements together. And it doesn't matter whether, like I said, you're a stonemason, you're an artist, you're an engineer, you're a dentist, you are a security professional in the IT universe, you still have this development model. But we don't have a very refined one in our industry. Find a mentor, find a good one, follow them from work to work if you can, and assume that that is the accepted norm. That is, you will educate on tools, techniques, methods, and process, then you will mentor, and then you will be on your own. If your development model for your shop does not include this, you need to be asking yourself, is your shop concerned with the quality of their deliverable, or are they concerned with the margin on the deliverable, which is usually more the case. Mark?
I love that advice, and I completely concur. The other thing I will add is that this is not an easy job. And there's a lot of people who, even as managers, they'll just assign to you, oh, you're going to do performance. And they assume that it's just as easy as functional automation, or it's as easy as even simple development. And it's just not. And the number one reason it's not as easy is because it crosses so many different technologies, and you have to be able to see the forest for the trees. And so much of technology business is around just focusing on specific technologies, specific trees. And so it might be the first time in your career that you stretch your brain a little bit to think about the forest, the entire architecture, those foundation skills we talk about, James, all the time. And so that's what I'll say. Find a great mentor, which I think is great advice, and then don't underestimate the challenge of actually learning the whole system end to end. And that is our advice on whether you can be or not be a performance engineer.
Or
James.
a tester.
Yeah, or a tester.
Yeah.
Thank you again, everyone, for listening to yet another brain-rattling episode of PerfBytes.
James, and this one was a much lighter episode than we normally do.
Yes.
Just because we had kind of the serious rant in the middle.
Yes.
On the news of the damned.
Yeah, it was a good rant.
It's time for a perf rant.
Yeah, it was a very good rant. A special shout out to all of the folks that will be at Software Test Pro conference, STPCon, in Phoenix, Arizona. In 2 weeks, we're going to do a live show at STPCon, and actually we'll be putting some information on the website for that. And of course, thanks to the sexy Irish voice of PerfBytes.
I'd like to thank my mother, because I know at least we have one person listening to the show, and that makes me feel good. Thanks, Mom.
You should also know that PerfBytes supports the ongoing work of the Performance Engineering Book of Knowledge, an industry-wide initiative to standardize knowledge and practices for performance testing and engineering. And of course, thanks to our friends at the Computer Measurement Group, the Workshop on Performance and Reliability, and to the nearest web performance meetup group in your town. We're supporters of the Software Test Professionals community of testers, and we hope to see you at the next STPCon.
This episode of PerfBytes is brought to you by the 7 things you cannot say on television. Consult your Carlin S. dictionary for more information.
Just a reminder that all the content on PerfBytes is owned by PerfBytes LLC and is shared under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives version 3.0 unported license. Of course, if you'd like to use any of the content of the PerfBytes show, feel free to contact us at info@perfbytes.com.
For any of you overachievers out there with spare time on your hands who are interested in becoming a contributor to PerfBytes, we would love to have your content. Please send an email with your perf rant, your perf poem, interview, or other performance-related content to submissions@perfbytes.com, and we'll get back to you right away to schedule that on the show. If you're interested in becoming a contributing author for the new PerfBytes book series, for this episode's topic, send an email to books@perfbytes.com. We're looking for at least 10 prolific and insightful performance literati to join the book sprint. We're interested in hearing from you.
If you love PerfBytes so much that you just can't get enough of us 24/7 and you miss us from week to week, You might want to just go ahead and follow us on all the various social media outlets, such as Twitter at PerfBytes, the Facebook fan page, the Tumblr log, perfbytes.tumblr.com, quick videos posted at quick.com/perfbytes. We have a PerfBytes LinkedIn forum. There's, of course, Spreaker.com, the PerfBytes page. On iTunes, you can just search the store and click subscribe on the PerfBytes page. And, of course, you can always follow us on the PerfBytes website at perfbytes.com. Check it out. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into PerfBytes. Have a great couple of weeks. We'll see you next time.
Have a great week.